Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Gilman. I have the great pleasure of being Chief of Staff for Mayor Peduto here in the city of Pittsburgh, and it's my honor to welcome you here today to our portico in recognition of survivors and revivers, and to celebrate a community that is focused on love, compassion, and healing. The one thing I can always tell you about the city of Pittsburgh is we will never be a city that treats people with addiction as criminals rather than our neighbors in need of love and care. We're never going to be a city that uses our police as the main way to work with people on the street in need of love, care, compassion, and a hand up. And we will always be a city that works in partnership with our incredible nonprofit community out there providing services to our most vulnerable residents. For many years, well, I don't know many, for a few years, I was on the board of Prevention Point when I was on city council. And I did it because I recognized what a critical role needle exchange was playing in our communities. Giving people the chance, number one, to avoid diseases and endangering their health as they battle through addiction. Number two, the opportunity for our incredible outreach team at Prevention Point, who you'll hear a little bit more of from, to engage that first contact. And it may not be the first contact, it may not be the second, it may not be the 150th contact, but there is that contact, and when someone knows you, they feel more likely to put out a hand and say, I need help, I want help, can you come over right now? And that's what Prevention Point does in making that connection. And we know there are people amongst us today, our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our fathers, our sons, our daughters, who are alive and parts of our family and our community because of Prevention Point and because of needle exchange. And we're going to celebrate that today here in the city of Pittsburgh. And for my part, we'll celebrate in two ways. Number one, the mayor has ordered the building to be lit up purple tonight in celebration of Overdose Awareness Day. And number two, he asked me to present the following proclamation from him. Whereas the city of Pittsburgh recognizes the importance of naloxone to prevent overdose deaths. Naloxone is a medication that allows people to survive an overdose and or revive someone experiencing an overdose. It works on all opioids, including fentanyl and all its analogs. And whereas Act 139 of 2014 expanded naloxone access to all Pennsylvanians by removing the necessity to first obtain a prescription, thus enabling them to obtain their own naloxone kit directly from their participating local pharmacy without first seeing a doctor. And whereas it is recognized that first responders come in many different forms, from EMS, firefighters, and police, to people who use drugs and save the lives of their peers, friends, and family every day through the use of naloxone. And whereas Prevention Point Pittsburgh participants of the Overdose Prevention Project, most of whom use drugs themselves, have performed over 3,000 rescues since the project began in 2005. Allegheny County EMS providers distributed 916 doses of naloxone in 2018 at the scene of an emergency, and the county's Department of Health trained over 2,000 people in naloxone use and distributed over 8,000 naloxone kits in 2018 alone. And whereas Allegheny County has seen a 41% reduction in overdose deaths in 2018 as a result of these efforts to distribute naloxone, every single life, a life worth saving. Now therefore be it resolved, now you have to pretend, that I, William Peduto, Mayor of the City of Pittsburgh, my beard's redder, I, William Peduto, Mayor of the City of Pittsburgh, do hereby declare August 27, 2019, Survivors and Revivers Day in our most livable city of Pittsburgh. Congratulations to Prevention Point. I just want to make two very quick observations before I introduce our next speaker. Number one, thanks to the incredible work of Laura Jagowski of the mayor's team, longtime Prevention Point board member. I carry naloxone in my car, I carry it in my office, and all of us are trained. Our security guards in the building are trained. People across City Hall have stickers on our doors to let you know that we have it on hand and we're here to save a life. And second, and you'll hear from one of the most amazing paramedics here in the city of Pittsburgh, I want to give recognition to all of public safety, from police and firefighters to our EMS providers to Director Hisrick, They have taken the work of Laura to the nth degree and made sure that everybody within public safety is on board with the mayor's vision that every life is a life worth saving. And their work in the street every single day as a partner is critical. And now it's my honor to introduce one of the most amazing people I know, going back to my time as a board member. Alice Bell is the Overdose Prevention Project Coordinator for Prevention Point Pittsburgh, which has provided naloxone to several thousand people. Alice has directly provided naloxone to people who use drugs since 2005 and been instrumental in advocating for the distribution in the county jail, passage of the Pennsylvania Naloxone Access Law, and other local, state, and national efforts to increase access to naloxone, including national advocacy for over-the-counter usage. Please help me in welcoming Alice Bell.
Can I make it go down, or do I need to? I'm going to be introducing everybody else today. Thank you, Dan. That was a wonderful introduction. So as the overdose prevention coordinator at Prevention Point, I do a lot of different things. The best part of my job and the most important part of my job is giving out naloxone at the syringe exchange every week and hearing the stories of people who tell me that they were able to save a friend's life. I've personally talked to at least a couple of thousand people who've saved someone with naloxone that they've gotten from us at Prevention Point. And I've heard so many statements like, you don't know what it means to have this and not have to live in fear of watching my best friend die. And this program has saved more lives than you can know. I want to thank my coworkers and Prevention Point volunteers who are here and others who aren't, who put this event together. I want to especially make a shout out to my coworker Katie Houston, who's really the one who's responsible for making this day happen. We'll make her come up. We'll make her come up at the end. So we mourn the loss of those who have died every day. We decided that for us, Overdose Awareness Day would not be just another day of mourning, but an opportunity to celebrate life. So today, we celebrate those whose lives have been saved and are here in the world today as a result, and those who have saved a life. And those are the people whose stories we're going to hear today. Our first speaker is Dana Gold. Dana started her career running a shelter for men challenged by underemployment, structural inequality, homelessness, and addiction. In 1990, she was the founding executive director of Sojourner House, where I've had the privilege and opportunity to do many naloxone trainings for the women who live there. Sojourner House is a nurturing environment where women and children struggling with addiction find help and hope for a better future. Dana is now the Chief Operational Officer of Jewish Family and Community Services. Welcome, Dana.
Just the right space right here, right? So, I've been someone who has been grown and changed by the people I know who have struggled mightily with the challenges of addiction, mental illness, and some of the things that come along with that. Homelessness, families torn apart, dreams crushed. And that's my work as a professional. But what most people don't know is that I am also the mother of someone who has overdosed many times and has been fortunate enough to be revived. The first time I found out that my daughter overdosed, I was in this building. I was in this building in a training for the police where we were talking about mentoring and skills training for public safety officials. And I got a text on my phone that said, "Your daughter overdosed, but she's okay." One of her friends thumped her on the chest hard enough to awaken her from her overdose. But that wasn't the first time I heard, that wasn't the first call I got, that wasn't the last text I received with that tragic news over and over again. But what I've learned from the men and the women and their families who have struggled with addiction their entire lives is that if we give people one more chance every day, sometimes multiple times a day, that then they have the opportunity to make their dreams a reality. They have the opportunity to try and put those pieces together of life that they struggle with so much and try it a different way, to put it together just a slightly different way, that maybe this time it will work. This time they won't need to use, or this time they may choose a different pathway that leads to where they want to be instead of where they end up. On the train tracks, in a corner of an abandoned building, underneath a bridge. All these places where people we love, people we know, end up. And if they're lucky, they wake up and they walk away and they try again. As a parent of someone who has struggled with addiction, I also have struggled to recover and to learn a new way of walking and a new way of dealing every single day so that I can adequately walk with my daughter as she tries to find the needles that will keep her safe. To walk with her underneath that bridge or in the woods somewhere in a tent. To walk with her, to show her, to share with her my love, my hope, my belief in her ability, and to everyone who suffers, their ability to make new choices for themselves that reflect the life that they want. So today, I got a text from my daughter from college. She's still freaking out. She's still doing crazy things, but she's doing them because she has another chance to make another choice. And today her choice is to stand in a university classroom and be excited about her opportunity to learn art history and psychology and to pick up the paintbrush that she left behind 8 years ago and start painting again. So who knows what her canvas will look like? Who knows what strokes she will choose and what colors will infuse that new work of art that she's creating with her life. And she has that chance because of people like yourself police officers, public safety officials, friends, people with that little tiny cartridge of life-saving naloxone. It's not a big deal for all of us to have that, to carry that, to make a difference with that. Changes a life, changes a future, and may even create incredible new masterpieces that we have yet to see. So thank you, Prevention Point. Thank you, City of Pittsburgh. Thank you for walking this journey with families like mine, with daughters like mine, who have their mark to make on this world. I'm grateful she and I have a chance to discover that together.
Thank you, Dana. Second speaker is Kenneth Aquiline, who was born just a few miles from here in Penn Hills. He's a United States Marine Corps veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom and currently a political science major at Duquesne University. He identifies as a person in long-term recovery from opioids and other substances since February 22nd, 2017. He's the head of security at Spirit Hall and Lodge, where he has used naloxone to save the life of a person who is experiencing an overdose. Welcome, Ken.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see everybody. It's crazy that I'm getting emotional because I really don't get too emotional. But overdose prevention and Narcan is something that's very near and dear to my heart. Just want to express the gratitude and humility for being here today, to being on the other side of the tracks, to being 1 out of the 10 that did have an opportunity to recover and then to be able to give back. As I will speak for the next 7 minutes, I want you to think that if it wasn't for Narcan 15 times, 15 different overdoses, multiple flights, multiple cardiac arrests, I'd be in a cemetery plot not too far from the Hill. But by the grace of something greater than myself and Narcan and the EMS and the community and the first responders and the police, I've been given a second chance. And so I have an obligation to carry the message of hope and to carry the message of Narcan and overdose prevention and what Prevention Point Pittsburgh does to the greater mass of people. So we'll start and talk a little bit about myself. You know, from a very young age, I do believe that I suffer from the disease of addiction. For me, it's very simple. 1 is too many and 1,000 is never enough. I knew that from a very young age. But when I turned 17, September 11th happened, and it was on my heart to go to the military. Deployed 2 times to Iraq in 2009. I got hit by a very bad explosion. I had a head injury. What that did to me was I got prescribed large amounts of opiate pain medication that I then became addicted to. As a result of the injury that I sustained in Iraq, I ended up being medically separated from the United States Marine Corps. I came back. I was struggling with PTSD, adjustment disorder, depression. Literally, I had nowhere to turn, and the only thing that brought me comfort was the pain pills I was getting from the military and then from the VA. Eventually, I ran out, and I found that solution in things like fentanyl and heroin and things like that, and that's where things really started to go downhill. You know, like I said, you know, I've been revived over 15 times with Narcan. I never thought I'd be able to recover. Just want to touch on a couple points real quick that are very near and dear to my heart, and I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget them. You know, I've overdosed in abandoned homes, I've overdosed in my bedroom, I've overdosed in parking lots, I've overdosed in cars. And every single time there was something greater than myself that put a first responder there, that put a police officer there, that put a fire department guy there, that had Narcan to save my life. If they didn't have Narcan, I wouldn't be here today. It's just that simple. You know, we talk a lot about the stigma when talking about the disease of addiction. I'm sure that when some of those folks walked in and saw me in the abandoned houses in Homewood and East Hills and Wilkinsburg, they saw an addict or a junkie. They didn't see a combat United States Marine. They didn't see somebody who would save lives overseas. They didn't see somebody who lived by the principles of honor, courage, and commitment. They didn't see somebody who had attained a certain level of college, who was willing to put his life down on the line. Because of society and the stigma, we saw an addict or a junkie. But there's a flip side to that. They also didn't see the great things that could be done by somebody who had a second chance. I try and be the example of the person who, if given a second chance as a result of Narcan being administered, what great things can happen. In society, we tend to see folks like myself as bad people trying to get better. Bad people trying to get good. The truth is, we're really just sick people trying to get better. If we were to walk down the street and see a diabetic lying on the side of the road and we knew he needed insulin, nobody would have a second thought about giving him insulin to save his life. But when we see somebody that's suffering from an overdose, obviously not the folks here, but the majority of folks out there in my experience, we think that it's not worth it, or it's not a worthy cause, or maybe this person won't get it. That's the stigma that we have to break down. The gift of life is a life that Narcan can't give, so we give it. To give life, to appreciate life. To give life and to appreciate life is something that's human, and it's in every single one of us. Johnny Westwood, Heather Dempsey, Mike Gangone, 3 people that were very, very close to me that did not find themselves in a situation where Narcan could be administered, and they're not here anymore. And so I want to lift them up today. What else I've learned is that when an individual suffers an overdose and they do not make it, the individual is obviously affected, but so are the families. And when families are affected, so are communities. And when communities are affected, so are societies, and eventually our nation is as a whole. Everybody here now is armed with the knowledge of what Narcan can do. We know that it can save lives. We've passed laws in the General Assembly. The mayor has declared days. The next step is up to us. How do we break down that stigma? How do we support the first responders? How do we lift up those that are carrying a message of hope? I really believe that if we can do that, we can turn this thing around. And I like to find myself as an example of what that can look like. Just because the disease is addiction and the medication is Narcan, it should not be looked at differently. It should not be looked at differently. I guess I'll end on this. Although the battle of addiction is a battle, as the lady before me spoke, and those that are influenced and have been touched by addiction in their family or their friends or their loved ones know, it's just a battle. From being in the Marine Corps, I know that a battle is just a small part of a war. And although we may lose the battle, if we come together as a community, if we come together as a society, as human beings, as first responders, those that recover, and those that make policy, if we come together, we can save lives. And I do want to end on this. I had, about a year ago, I did a podcast called Multiple Disruptions. I'm the head of security over at Spirit Hall Lounge. I'm also an intern at State Representative Innamorato office. I came on board and they said, hey, do you know anything about harm reduction, about overdose awareness? I said, yeah, I'd love to help you work on that. So I'm working at Spirit Hall Lodge, and at 9 o'clock I did this podcast, and it aired on TV, and literally it aired on the radio. At 9 o'clock I'm talking about how, since I am an overdose survivor, I feel obligated to carry Narcan to save somebody's life who I may run into. That aired at 9 o'clock that Saturday night. At 9:05 I was administering Narcan to a patron of ours outside of Spirit Hall Lodge. I hit her once, she didn't wake up. I'm a train-the-trainer through the Department of Veteran Affairs. I hit her twice and she came back to life. If that didn't show me, if that didn't show me what my purpose was and what I need to be, now I'm a little bit calmed down, I was all excited for if that doesn't show me the power of somebody who recovers, then carrying that message, becoming informed, becoming trained, and having Narcan that was given to me, and being able to save another person's life as a result, to me, there's nothing better. So once again, thank you for having me here. Very excited, and let's just keep working together as a community to do the things that we know we should do. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Next, I'd like to introduce Nique, who is 34 years old, uses they, them, her pronouns, but never miss, ma'am, or girl. They are a professional cook, an aspiring professional chef, recovering from addiction, attempted reformed criminal, fighter against the country club mentality, and life giver to the coolest dude on planet Earth. Nique's only goal in life is to make sure no one goes without love and compassion by feeding and healing the world, focusing on body positivity, mental health awareness, and being unapologetic in everything they do. Please welcome Nique.
Hello. This is really weird to be here and to hear people talk about overdose awareness. To see you guys applauding overdoses, which is not what you're doing, but it's kind of what it feels like. I thought about, there's a meme going on the internet right now that says to not trust the manipulations and the things that addicts say to you, no matter how toxic they can be. And I think we spend a lot of time as addicts, substance abusers, junkies, dabblers, worrying about what people who don't use think about us. And it even took me a long time to figure out what to say here today, because every time I sat down to write anything remotely coherent about addiction, I just triggered the hell out of myself. And all I could think about is all the super crazy stories of when I used, train hopping, sex work, living in a house full of clowns in New Orleans, living in empty banks in Florida, staying in Tent City in Arizona. So that was probably one of the worst things in my entire life. I can giggle about these stories, and I see a lot of the looks on your faces, and they seem really gruesome, but I healed from a lot of those moments. I was also discouraged by the idea of how many people that I've hurt, how they would see me standing here today, trying to be this prophetic person talking to you about overdoses and healing. It almost kind of made me feel like a hypocrite, but I pushed on. These worries, these fears, anxieties during recovery, during my process in life, will always be linked to my past, always be linked to my trauma, and I try really hard to mask it a lot with jokes and giggles and talking about how flawless I look up here talking to you guys, but it doesn't heal me the way that I necessarily should. I want to use this platform to help humanize the community that I come from, because I think that's a huge issue. I'm an activist, so I'm used to being extremely combative, so it was a little weird for me to hear that this city embraces the addict and it doesn't jail the addict and it tries to heal the addict, because that hasn't been my experience in Pittsburgh at all. And given the things that I've done, it's just strange to know that me as an addict, I've been tortured in ACJ because of the things that I did, and I've been talked to terribly by the police officers in this city, and I've been talked to terribly by the communities, and I've actually been rejected by Sojourner House because I didn't have enough insurance. So I want people to understand that drug addiction really starts with mental health, and that's what the disease actually is. It's not that we just can't help ourselves and we can stop anytime we want to. I mean, right now, as I'm standing here, I'm convincing myself that what I'm doing is really good. And when I walk off this podium, I don't have to get high just because I feel really good. And I don't have to go out of my way to just make myself feel more in the clouds so that I can deal with standing up here today. Like it's a lot, there's just a lot of triggers. And they got even worse after the first time I overdosed, because I'll never be the same person that I was before that first overdose. Knowing where I'm gonna go when I die haunts and intrigues me. I hear the word drug and that's all I can think of. I see your uniform and I think about the first time that Narcan brought me back to life, and it was the first thing I saw. I saw that badge, I saw that blue shirt, and I was relieved that I was still here, but at the same time I was still kind of disappointed, because again, that's my mental health, my disease of not thinking that I'm worth anything. And these experiences will be with me forever. I'm kind of an unwilling time traveler now. I'll think about drugs at every street corner that I see, in every bathroom in Pittsburgh, every single bathroom in Pittsburgh. Which is, when I use them now, as a very sober person, it's weird to look over and be like, oh yeah, I remember that toilet paper okay, whatever. A lot of people in my community, we need healing, but more importantly, we need that space to focus on our healing, and we need to worry a lot less about our families. I wish I had a mom like Dana. Like, I think that's super dope, the things that you do, but at the same time, I'm almost relieved that my mom doesn't go through what you go through, because I want to go through that on my own, and I don't want anybody else to feel that way. Because I literally felt death, and there's no structural design that can help me come back from that. I have to find my own way, and I have to figure out what works for me. I'm not one of those NA people. I really don't like it. I have a very hard time talking about myself, even though I'm terribly good at it. And that's just, that's what NA does. But I do know that love and support, even from a distance, makes a lot of this easier. I know that now that there's a community that's pushing to make sure that Narcan is kind of still in circulation, like that's a really good thing. Also a really tragic thing, because I say that word and all I can think of is the last blue face that I saw that brought, that Narcan kind of helped. There are still points in my life when I get very stressed out and I scare the crap out of my friends, and I tell them that I really want to use when things get super hard. I know that I have Narcan, I know that I have love, and I have support that will bring me back no matter what, and that's all that really matters. The only thing that I just really need to know is that there are people out there that just don't want me to die, I understand a lot of addicts, people that use substance abusers, we mess with your money, and that really sets people back. There's money that I've taken that needed to go to rent, and people got kicked out of their homes, or needed to go to this place and that place, and I definitely can't pay them back because I'm broke. I can't keep apologizing for it. I can only say that I'll never do it again. I can only say that all of these organizations and people in love will help me stay on track. So as far as my contribution here to talk about the overdose awareness, is I just want you to look at people like me, understand that I could be dangerous around your wallet, but not around your heart, kind of thing. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm waiting for the traffic to go by, and I realize that's not going to happen. Our next speaker is Kevin Kelley, General Manager and Chef at the Square Cafe in Regent Square, where he's worked for 10 years. He's also president of the Turtle Creek Volunteer Fire Department with over 12 years of service to the community. He's a person with lived opioid use experience and was personally revived with naloxone twice. He shares his story, hoping to end the stigma surrounding addiction. He also identifies as a person in long-term recovery and will be celebrating 11 years in recovery on August 28th, 2019. That's tomorrow. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the applause. I wish it was actually tomorrow. It would have been great to celebrate the recovery with all of you, here and present. And I'm very fortunate and very grateful to be here today. As they said, I've overdosed twice. 15, that's pretty impressive. I guess the microphone's too low, right? But, at the time, this was back in 2005 and 2006, whenever, my addiction was really bad, and it started with the doctors and the pain pills and the, even before that, I knew I always, had problems with substances. Growing up, I tried everything. I would try anything. And, I thought maybe it was just going to be a phase. Because, growing up, I heard about people that were, addicts and lived under bridges, and they would steal from you and, you know, hurt you and harm you and things like that. And I never forever wanted to be one of those people. But, you know, it's amazing how the progression is whenever you start, you know, with the pills, and then you run out of the pills and you'll do whatever it takes to not feel that way. You know, and the next thing you know, you're shooting heroin. And, you know, because all my life I never said that would be me until it was. And then when it was me, I didn't want to be anything but what I was at the time. And my substance abuse, you know, took me to many strange places, and I wound up in Louisiana in 2006. And, you know, at the time it was they were still rebuilding after Katrina, and luckily at the time they were like training new law enforcement, new medics, because everybody bailed basically on the town, and the military still had a heavy presence around the area. But Bourbon Street was still open, and there was still a lot of drugs, so that's why I kind of wound up there. And, you know, at the time, they would actually look for people that were, you know, overdosing and needed it. And you didn't hear about Narcan on the news or anywhere back then. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to be revived twice, but also at the same time, I still didn't even know about Narcan until a time later that I, you know, found out what it was. And, you know, when I first got into recovery, you know, I always, I struggled for the first couple years, and, you know, I was in and out. I would be using, I would be clean, I would be using, I'd be clean, and I was always ready to give up on myself. But my family and, you know, my friends and everybody around me was never, they never gave up on me. And every time I would fall, they were there to pick me up. And, you know, I couldn't understand why, you know, because the stigma, you know, I was one of those people. And, you know, through recovery, I've learned, you know, once finally I got it, that, and was able to see recovery in other people, that you never know when it's going to be their turn. You know, I've seen a lot of people that I thought never in a million years, you know, would recover. And today they have jobs, you know, they're important people. They hold public offices, they're police officers. And it's just amazing, you know, what the other side of this thing can be. But unfortunately, we can't be here without things like Narcan, you know. And one of the things that really got me involved, you know, in coming out and speaking and coming out and telling my story. I could tell you stories for hours, but I won't do that to you, I'm sorry. My wife has really motivated me, you know, in this thing. And she's actually the mayor of our town. We live in Turtle Creek, and she ran her whole mayoral platform on recovery, you know, and at the time I didn't know it, but I was going to be an example. So, you know, she started, you know, doing all these things, the naloxone trainings, and, you know, even just talking about, you know, addiction and recovery, period, in public, because a lot of people didn't do that in public. And, you know, I have a lot of friends who are first responders and EMTs, not inside the city of Pittsburgh, but, you know, we're outside the city of Pittsburgh. And I see their Facebook posts and their social media, and, you know, they post on there, you know, let these people die. There's nothing we can do for them. All we're going to do is going to be there again tomorrow to give them another shot of Narcan. And I used to just, you know, think, it used to really frustrate me, because I wanted to say, hey, you know, I was one of those people once, and but at the time I didn't want to. I don't know if it was where I was in my recovery or where I was as a person, but you know, my wife really pushed me to put a face to this thing, you know, to people that would say, let them die, they don't deserve another chance. You know, I would say to them, would you tell me that? And they would say to me, no, you're different. And I would be like, no, I am that same person. And I was that same person. I don't have to be that person today because of recovery. But, you know, we're not the ones who get to pick and choose who lives and dies. And, you know, recovery it's not an easy thing. And even when you're at your worst, sometimes that's not what you want, is recovery. And you would rather just keep on going and living, because that's, you know, the hold that addiction puts on you. And so, you know, I like to always, try to be the face of somebody who has been revived or somebody who has been an addict. And today, I'm president of the fire department. I have a good job. I've had the same job for 12 years. I'm a responsible person, and somebody once told me in recovery, now as long as you don't pick up, you can do anything and be anything that you want to be. And I really took that to heart, because all my life I was basically told I wouldn't be. And I've really taken that as my goal to prove that I can change, that people can change, and they can do amazing things if given the chance. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Kevin. So we've heard a number of really heart-rending, heartfelt individual stories. And our next speaker, I think, is going to talk a little bit more about some of the framework, the systemic issues that put individuals into the situations that they're in. I mean, lots of people have struggles with different kinds of physical and mental health problems, but the way that our drug policy is structured in our society creates the risk, the constant risk of death and incarceration and many of the other problems that people face that are not their responsibility as individuals alone. So I'd like to introduce Simon Taxel. Simon is a crew chief and public safety diver with the Pittsburgh Bureau of EMS, a medical specialist on the Pennsylvania Urban Search and Rescue Strike Team, and a contributing author to the Journal of Emergency Medical Services and Continuing Education Solutions. He's written extensively about the role of emergency medical services in harm reduction and the opioid crisis. And he speaks very eloquently about those subjects. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be back here. For those of you who weren't here, I had the opportunity and the privilege to speak at this event last year. And so now, here we are, 1 year later. And we've done some good. Some lives have been saved, and that's fantastic, but we still have a long way to go. The framework that I try and approach the harm reduction work that we do at this point is the simple statement: every drug overdose death is a policy failure. I'll say it again. Every single drug overdose death is a healthcare policy failure. Each and every one of those lives that we have lost could have been saved and should have been saved. And so we have to continue to move forward and develop new programs and new innovative solutions to combat this crisis. There's a lot of data out there right now, primarily that overdose deaths have dropped significantly, especially in Allegheny County. It's absolutely true, and it is in large part due to the Narcan distribution throughout the community. At Pittsburgh EMS, we were the first EMS agency in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, possibly even the entire country, to be doing community Narcan distribution. We don't clap to that because we're not doing enough. Prevention Point has been out there for many, many years, as well as Allegheny Health Department and a variety of other stakeholders that have all been involved long before we were. The problem is that while the overdoses are being reversed with Narcan, is that people aren't calling 911 anymore. And we are losing a vital opportunity to engage with some of the most dissociated and most at-risk members of our community. And so it's going to be up to us to figure out new ways to meet that community where they are and find new ways to help them, because they don't need us when they overdose nearly as much. I have a little story to tell. Not too long ago, we were called to a residence here in Pittsburgh to assist the U.S. Marshals who encountered somebody who they believed to be under the influence of drugs during a warrant raid. And we got there and we encountered a very unfortunate young woman who, if I could describe her condition, I would describe it as end-stage opioid use. She wasn't overdosed in the moment that we saw her, but the long-term ill effects of opioid use were readily apparent, from the open sores all over her body, to her abnormal vital signs, to the lack of teeth in her mouth. Under the threat of arrest and coercion, she agreed to go to the hospital with us. We do have a hepatitis B vaccination program at Pittsburgh EMS, and so I am empowered to administer hepatitis B vaccines to any at-risk patients. She fortunately agreed to that. For anybody that doesn't know, there is currently a hepatitis B outbreak among the drug-using community in this region, and so we're doing the best that we can to combat that. So we got her a vaccine, and then we took her to the hospital. I failed to enroll her in our post-overdose response team PORT program because I assumed that she would be admitted to the hospital. She found out that she had outstanding warrants through Allegheny County, and she was under the impression that she was going to be arrested. So even though she did have a bed at Mercy Hospital, she was going to be admitted. Long before she was ever admitted to the hospital, she fled. I've gone out twice to try and make contact with her to see if there's any other way that we can get services for her. I have not been able to find her yet. And that's a very clear example of where we are failing. We have to find ways to help people and remove the threat of incarceration. I've never had to choose between going to the hospital or going to jail, but I can never imagine how difficult that choice may be. And this is a person that may very well die very soon if we can't figure out some way to meet her where she is. It is a clear example of the work that we still have to do. So the other main thing that frames the way I approach the opioid crisis is its intersection with racial and social justice. As we attack this crisis and we approach it, we can't let ourselves off the hook that this didn't become our problem and it didn't become the community at large's problem until it became a white middle class problem. Dangerous drug use has affected the at-risk communities of color throughout the city and throughout this country for millennium. But for a long time, no one cared. So I don't even pretend to have all the answers. I don't know how to stand here and address structural racism and housing insecurity and work insecurity and food insecurity. But until we do, this problem isn't going to go away. We can keep saving lives with Narcan, and it is vitally important. I am a firm 100% believer in it, but we can't let ourselves believe that this problem is solved. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate all your time, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to come and speak again.
Thank you. Before we end today, I'm going to make Katie come up with... my wonderful coworker, Katie Houston.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up today, I'm loud. I'd like to take a moment to thank a few folks. The first people I'd like to thank are the participants of Prevention Point Pittsburgh. People who are actively using drugs. We always refer to them as the first responders. They're the ones who are out there saving lives every single day. They're the ones who care about their friends, their family, their community, And not one of them could be here today to tell their stories because of the stigma and fear that they feel constantly from society. And I want to change that. I want next year's survivors and revivers to have someone who is actively using drugs to get up here and tell their story, because their stories are so worth telling. So tell your family, tell your friends, cut that stigma shit out. I'd also like to thank the City of Pittsburgh Office of the Mayor for partnering with Prevention Point Pittsburgh. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Dan, if you're still out here. Thank you, everyone else. I'd also like to give a big thanks to our amazing sponsors for making this event possible. They include Stoughton Farm Foundation, Allies for Health and Wellbeing, Giant Eagle Specialty Pharmacy, UPMC Health Plan, the Back Clinic of UPMC, My Tree Medicinals, Jewish Healthcare Foundation, Accessible Recovery Services, Asties, South Hills Pharmacy, UPMC Community Care Behavioral Health, Coordinated Care Network Pharmacy, and a special thanks to the Allegheny County Health Department, who's out here giving out naloxone kits today. So if you don't have one, get over there and get one. We all should be carrying it every single day. I'd like to thank all of the tablers who are out here for all the work that they do every day for our community. And I'd also like to thank our development committee with Prevention Point Pittsburgh and all their hard work with putting this event together. So, and a big thanks for everyone who came out today. We're so happy to have you here listening to these stories. Hope to see you next year. One last thing, we're probably going to Mitchell's to have some celebratory drinks. For those who do drink, you are welcome to join us soonish, like in 30 minutes-ish. Okay, thank you again.